Some colleges call it a personal statement. Some colleges call it the college essay. So when we say personal statement or essay, we're talking about the same thing. We will talk about a supplemental writing piece or a specific topic that the colleges might have additionally to their college essay, but just know personal statement and essay are interchangeable during this presentation. The essay allows that college admission officers or committees to get a sense of who you are as a person outside of your GPA and test scores, which they very, very much value. We're going to talk a lot about resources and some activities that you can be doing to help your college essay. And one of the best resources that all three of us believe in is somebody called Ethan Sawyer. He's the college essay guy. He's phenomenal. If you literally just go on YouTube and do college essay guy, there's hundreds of, well, not hundreds, there's hours and hours and hours. I'm sure at some point it's going to get to hundreds of hours, but there's hours of his videos and tutorials and activities that he does across the nation with actually international students and national students. So he's a great reference as well. But his quote that we all love is, "Your topic is not your topic. You are your topic." And we're going to talk a lot about what is the college essay and how to write the best one. And the biggest piece is it's you. The entire essay is going to be about you. You're going to talk about you, yourself, and I, which can be very intimidating and not how you're used to writing. And just know we have some strategies for you.
So it's really important that you're also going to hear us use the word voice a lot, because it's really important that it is your voice, and that is important not just in what you want to say, but also in how you want to say it, and then also in the revision process. When you are writing your essay, it's really, really important that you understand not just who your audience is, but that your voice doesn't get lost in the entire process. And it's not going to be a regurgitation of your application. It shouldn't be anything that they can already read in your application. It has to be something that is unique and different, and that is an additional piece to what they're going to see in your academics. In the last workshop this morning, Ms. Bateman said something really good, and that was your grades, your test scores, your awards, your rank, all of that is mathematical data. That doesn't tie you to the personality that is behind all that data. So that's what you want to make sure that you have in your statement. As she mentioned, the word "I" is 100% allowed, and this is what we're talking about when we talk about voice. You're not going to think of writing a 131 like you've learned in English class. And you're going to kind of have to undo all of those habits that you have learned about how to write a proper essay when you're doing this. Really important that you definitely are going to be uncomfortable, as she said, because you're going to write about yourself, and you have to put yourself in a vulnerable state to be able to do that, to be honest with yourself and with your audience when you're writing about yourself. Don't worry about whether you sound arrogant or conceited. We will read your essay and we will tell you if the tone comes off that way. We know it's uncomfortable to write about yourself, but that is what they want to know. A good way to think about it, and you'll see it later on, is if I were sitting across from that person at a table, what do I want them to know about me? So when you are writing, you're also going to want to tend to write about something else or tell a story, and that's good and great, but it needs to be focused on you. So if you need to provide context by telling a story to kind of set it up so that you can talk about yourself, then of course you can do that, but the majority of it needs to be about you. One of the strategies that we've been discussing also is, after you write it, get rid of that first paragraph, and chances are you're going to see that you haven't deleted anything that is significant enough to keep, and you're going to get to the point. You don't have to have a long introductory paragraph. You don't even have to have one of those hooks that you're going to learn about in English class. You can just get straight to the point and talk about what you want to talk about.
Yep, and as long as you're sticking to the 80%, 20% rule, like Mrs. Mora said, you can write about someone else that has a huge influence on your life or an experience that you had. But that's only 20% of your essay. It's got to tie back to you and how you went with the life lesson you learned, or how it inspired you to create the club that you created. But again, it's how does it tie back to you? And then how are you going to use that skill or that dream of yours in transition to college? While you're writing, some great questions to ask yourself, because again, admissions committee representatives and people in the admissions department will be reading these essays, and they are wanting to admit you as a student on their campus. So some questions you can ask yourself is, as I'm writing, do I sound like a good classmate, a roommate, or a student on campus? Can the reader hear my voice, which we'll go into in just a moment? What will you get to know, how will you get to know others, and how will you engage the campus community? These are all things to help elevate yourself off of the page. Just as much as all of our high schools, we want you to be involved in our clubs and organizations and go to our sports events or be a player on our team for any amount of sports or clubs or organizations. Those colleges want that as well. So anything that you can show your engagement on the college campus and your future goals or the future clubs and organizations that you want to be involved in, that's a huge piece that you can write about as well. And then reminder, who's reading this? It's the recommendation committee.
Now, keep in mind with the admissions committee, you know your audience, but you also don't know your audience. So, so it could be a 25-year-old young adult, but it could also be a 65 or 70-year-old director of admissions. So, so keep that in mind as you are drafting it out.
And when we're talking about your voice, we're meaning an 18-year-old mature high school student. They know what that type of student and person sounds like. So two things we want to say: make sure it's still unique to your voice. We definitely want others to read your essay, but make sure if edits are happening or suggestions are being made, that it's not taking you and your essence out of that paper. But more importantly, if you have somebody edit it and they change your vocabulary or they elevate it in a way that you don't normally speak, the admissions counselors will pick up on that as well. So just be as authentic as possible and just make sure it's you and your passions and your heart on that sheet of paper. Well, on the digital screen, I guess I should say.
There is a question on the chat.
Yeah.
Rashmi, we're gonna give you an example on that in a little bit. And again, all of that is going to be part of the process. His question is a really good one. If some of the questions are write about a talent, hobby, or interest or passion that your application would be incomplete without. If you're writing about the activity, how do you avoid talking about the activity, not yourself? You have to have a balance. And in the process of writing the essay and getting revised, we will be asking you questions to help you make sure that the wording is appropriate so that you're showing and not telling.
Yep.
And something else that Ms. Lorenzana put in there, I want you all to look at in the chat, is the values exercise. Universities have personalities just like you do. And so, and they all have different values and things that are important to them as a school. So something that you can do is truly think about what are your values and what do you want to show that university about what are the values that are most important to you. So you will have between 250 or 500 and 600 to 650 words. The sweet spot is between 500 and 550. And usually when you write more, you're not really saying much. When you write too little, you're also not saying much. But again, all of that is going to be part of the process, and we will help you either by telling you what to cut that doesn't say anything, or by asking you probing questions that are going to help you add something to your essay to make it better. The key is going to be making sure that you are staying true to yourself and being authentic about what you're writing. Don't worry about what you think they want to hear. They have read thousands of essays, and not only do they have a good grasp on what an 18-year-old writes, but they also have seen very unique things. So it's really important that when you come off as authentic, that's going to be evident in the paper. You don't have to write about your deepest, darkest secret or obstacle. I've been to a couple of essays, and one of the things that the college essay people say is, you want to write about the scars and not about the wounds. And I was talking to a student recently, and I said, you can go deep, but you don't have to go dark. And what that means is, um, when you write about the scars and not the wounds, you're not talking about stuff that's still fresh in your mind, where you still have maybe hurt feelings or negative emotions attached to it, because that's going to be evident on the paper. You want to talk about the scars because the scars are going to show things that you've overcome and things that provide some perspective. You're going to hear us say the word perspective a lot as well. What perspective do you have about your life so far, about your experience? But believe it or not, you don't have to tell a story about your deepest, darkest situation or secret. You can write about mundane things. One of the most popular topics that a girl wrote about a couple of years ago, or an essay that became viral, was a girl that wrote about walking through the aisles at Costco and thinking about what she was purchasing as she was going through it. And she kind of basically just made again, it was more a reflection on her life and why is she shopping at Costco as opposed to, Walmart or Saks Fifth Avenue or Sam's or whatever. So it was basically just a really interesting thing about something as mundane as shopping. If you're funny, let your sense of humor come through. If you are positive, let your positivity shine and your optimism. Some of the shyest and most reserved people can have the most significant observations about the world around them. So let that come through as you're writing. And this is kind of going to go about the showing and not telling with that question that Rashmi had. Go ahead, Ms. Bateman.
Sure. So don't be afraid to think outside of the box. Like Ms. Moore just said, you could even, write about your shopping experiences or different mundane things in your life that you don't even think about. Last year, I had a student write about herself, comparing her personality traits to her favorite snack. And it was just phenomenal because she, made humor and human emotions to a snack that kind of matched her personality. So it can just even be that creative. Don't feel like you're not creative and now you're not going to have a phenomenal essay. We do have examples of things to stay away from and good examples of things to write about. But again, don't worry about being outside of the box. And when we're talking about recalling events, give more of a play-by-play, meaning when you're writing an essay, you don't want to be like, well, first I did this, which then made me go into this, which then turned me into a better person. Literally describe your event. If you have an outgoing personality, instead of saying I have an outgoing personality, you can say I make friends wherever I go, or these are my experiences of how I connect with other people. So it's really just taking the time to, it's okay when you're brainstorming, and we'll talk about this in a moment, it's okay to list play-by-play ideas to get yourself organized, but then the next part of your brainstorming is going to be, okay, how do I turn this factual line into something that I can write about in a more descriptive manner.
So you're not just gonna write an essay and be done with it. This is a long process. You're gonna start by writing different drafts of your essay, and usually that very first draft that you write, most of you probably have already done that because some junior teachers assigned it and then you threw it away and you decided not to use that. So chances are that that's going to happen. There are multiple ways to do it, and you just have to find which one is more suitable for you. So you can just write down as many thoughts as you have about that one particular topic, and then put it aside for a little bit, read it again, and then continue on from there. Some of you would rather just outline. These are the points that I want to get across, and then you can figure out how to say it so that it's more meaningful and more creative or more unique to you. Some of you don't even know, like you're just going to look at a blank sheet of paper and you're like, I don't even know where to start. So a voice memo app is really helpful where you just start talking about the different topics, and then you can transcribe what you are speaking so that you can see what it looks like in the written form. Pretend that you're being interviewed by Oprah, or like it's a celebrity interview. What would you want to have them ask you, and then turn that into what you want to say. Don't worry about the word count, whether it's too short or too long. We will work with you on editing. It definitely is easier when it's too long and we can cut than when it's too short and we need to add. But if it's too short, it's okay, because we will read it and ask you questions to help you elaborate on different thoughts. Of course, check your grammar and your spelling multiple times. There's a difference between there, and there, your and your. And so Grammarly, I know, has been referred before. It's a good resource to use. Have a trusted person read your essay before submitting, but not too many. So you want to stick to 2 or 3 people. You can have one read it just for grammar and spelling. You can have somebody else read it for content. Too many people reading your essay leads to too many people giving you their opinions. And then potentially, if you have too many revisions, you can lose your voice in the process. So whatever you receive in terms of feedback, always take it with a grain of salt, because it may be what that person thinks college admissions wants to hear, and it may not be what you want to say. So still take ownership and leadership over your own essay, and know that, especially when you come and give it to us, you can accept or not accept whatever advice and feedback we give you. And know that we're going to be pretty blunt about it. With the whole do I sound too arrogant thing, I had a student a number of years back that wrote an essay, and I said to him, this sounds very arrogant. And the student didn't like it, and he still submitted the essay how it was. So it's your choice whether you're going to accept our advice or not. And the other thing we want to make sure that you understand, the personal statement or college essay, the general one, does not have to have the specific school's name, especially if you're applying to other universities. Keep it generic. Later on, when you get to the supplemental questions, if your university requires supplemental questions, that's when you need to be more specific about the school, because most of them are going to have the why us question. And that is an additional short 250-word question that you will add separate to this particular essay. So, of course, it's a big no-no when it says, I can't wait to be a UF Gator, and you send it to UCF. Don't do that.
Yeah. They don't appreciate that. So common essay topics, try to avoid writing about. So I will preface by, of course, you are welcome, and we encourage you to write about any topic in any essay that you would like for your personal statement. But just realize UF, FSU, UCF, they get 60,000-ish applications every year. So there's a very common theme of essays that they read constantly every single year. We didn't make these things up. We go through a ton of different workshops and information sessions throughout the years. And so these are the common things that keep coming up that admissions counselors are saying, we read these types of essays all the time. So also, some of these items that I'm going to outline, you think of your life in chapters. If you're 18 years old, you have 18 chapters in a book already. A sports injury or a big game is not even a full chapter of your full life story. So it's just it's a fraction. It might be the worst thing that ever happened to you, and I hate that you had to go through that, but know that doesn't define you. There are other things that you can speak about and write about. But again, if that is what you would like to write about, we won't stop you, but just know that a sports injury or the big game that you lost or the big championship that you won, the admissions counselors have read that a lot. Mission trips. So colleges like equality across all their students. Not everybody can afford to go on a mission trip or are involved in an organization to be able to. So sometimes that might show you in an unfavorable light, but again, you won't not get into college because you went on a missions trip. But not everybody gets that exact same experience. And also a lot of times students speak 80% about the missions trip and only 20% about yourself. And so that's an area that sometimes we feel that students lose their voice in writing about as well, because you want to talk about the amazing experience you had. And so again, it just has to tie back to you and how you're going to move forward with your next step in life. The big 3Ds, the death, disease, and divorce. Again, none of us want any of you all to have to deal with any one of these aspects. And if you have, if it has significantly changed your life and there's a way that you can write about it that makes your story unique than a typical death, disease, or divorce story, then I would encourage you to do so. Political event beliefs, what Mrs. Morris said, you don't know who's reading this. It could be a very conservative young or old person. It could be a very liberal young or old person. Again, we would hope that their opinions would be able to remain biased when they're reading your essay, but we can't assume that will happen. So making sure that you are not writing, your topic is not offending somebody who's reading it, is something to think about. Why your SAT or ACT scores aren't high enough, there's a section if you have to write about that. You shouldn't need to, but that's definitely not part of your essay or should be. A summary of your accomplishments, that's already somewhere else in your application. And then your mental health issue, kind of what we're saying, that doesn't necessarily define you. There are so many other aspects about you that you could write about, or different experiences. I know the chat was going, is there anything that I need to read, or have they all been answered? Okay, fantastic.
No, we do want to remind you that there's a section where you can talk about COVID. So
Yes.
you don't have to write your essay about COVID. In fact, you shouldn't write your essay about COVID. If there's anything that you need to say with regards to COVID, there's a question where you do that. Now, I do want to tell you, it's okay to leave it blank if your life was not impacted. Just because the question is there doesn't mean you have to address it. Now, of course, the essay, that's a different thing. But the COVID question is truly not necessary unless your life or your academics, unless COVID impacted you in some way that you think is going to affect the decision. Otherwise, it's perfectly fine to leave that blank.
And we mentioned this on another slide. If you notice, the word count is 500 to 650 words. That's under a page. We're talking about 2 large-ish paragraphs. So if you think about speaking about yourself and having to write a 3 or 4 page essay, that's not happening. It's very concise, and it's not as big of a writing piece as you might think that it is. And then supplement or side, like why us essays, like Ms. Morris said, it's only 250 words, which is a paragraph, if that.
All right, so college essay mistakes. I'm not going to go over every single one of them, but I do want to let you know, if you look at the first 3, the first 3 bullets, you'll see that that's kind of what you, when you were probably more in middle school than high school, it was like the hook. Steer clear of that. Also, a sentence like the fortuitous phenomena that transpired on the fortnight of, that sounds like you plucked every single word out of the thesaurus. Don't do that either. It's okay for it to be in common, plain spoken language. You also don't want to, be too literal. But it's okay if you feel like you need to do that in your writing process, and then we'll work that out as we edit. For example, in the something that I always see is the passive voice. For example, if let's say we're going to talk about an experience, I had this experience and it taught me that change up to active voice. I learned, I did, I saw, etc. When things happen to you, that comes off as passive. So make sure that you take those sentences and basically you just have to flip it. Instead of it taught me, I learned from. The sticking too close to the prompt, again, if you need to, just in your initial process, by all means, go ahead and do it, and then we'll work on pulling that out. And then again, it's about you, not about other people. I do want to reiterate the issue about the first paragraph. Look it over, delete that first paragraph, and usually you will see that you haven't missed any important information. That first paragraph was like your warm up, and that's perfectly okay. Here you have a number of resources that are where you can see not just essay tips, but also essays that worked, especially if you're looking at competitive universities. I do want to give you a word of caution. Number one, don't plagiarize. Don't take that essay and then change little bits here and there so that it's more like you, and then submit that, because they can pick up on it. And of course, that means that you're plagiarizing already, which they don't want students that are plagiarizing at their universities. Um, it can also be both a good and a bad thing. Sometimes it'll be a good thing if you look at it, because it'll be like, oh, yeah, I could totally do this. But if you're the kind of person that is going to get overwhelmed by looking at it and be like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to write this essay like this, then don't do it. Also, if you do this, make sure you look at 5 to 10 different essays and don't just look at one for each of these schools, because what we want you to see when you're looking at these examples is that there is a wide variety of essays that worked and that got students in these universities. So it's not a formula. When we're talking about college admissions, I always get a lot of students that say, is this little bitty thing going to give me an edge over this little bitty thing? And, unfortunately, there is college admissions is a human process. The essay is the most human of all the different pieces of your essay. And so it is important that you are kind of sticking true to yourself. So here are the prompts.
So Common App and Coalition, we're highlighting Common App right now. The Common App essay prompts were released earlier this spring. So for the class of 2022, these are the 7 topics that you can choose from. I have had students start writing about prompt number 2, and it's morphed into prompt number 5. Things like that happen. Know that the prompt and the essay that you start with might not necessarily be the type of essay that you end with. Another great strategy is maybe take 5 or 10 minutes and brainstorm ideas about each prompt, and then see how the prompts that you have the most information that you can write about, or the things that came more natural for you to write about, can be huge for you also. Again, if you are more of auditory and you're not necessarily great at starting and typing off on a blank screen, talk out some of these prompts to yourself in a voice memo app and listen to them and see if you can expound more on a prompt. You are only choosing one. It is okay if you choose one and it morphs into another one, and you, in your common application, you said that you are writing on prompt number 4 and it kind of hits multiple prompts. That is okay. You're going to see there are similarities through all of them. Prompt number 4 this year is new. And so the other prompts, Common App doesn't really change a lot of their prompts throughout this years, but they did choose number 4, and that is different for your class. And then we have Coalition, same thing. You have 5 prompts to choose from. If you are applying to most of your schools in Common App, then there's no reason for you to write a Coalition essay, and vice versa. Your Common Application essay is attached to your Common Application profile. But there are similar topics, so they can go through each, but you want to stick to the one platform that you're using.
Okay, now a few things so that you guys know in terms of the process. We are all happy to look over your essay. Ms. Lorenzana, what was it?
It didn't move to the next slide.
Oh, there is no more slides.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And actually, we should have that as a slide.
Good question.
So using Google is probably the best way to share your essay with us and give us editor rights so that we can put the comments on the side, and that way you can see what we are suggesting. We all believe that that is the most beneficial way for you to send us your essay. Now, it's also really important that you consider the fact that we have at least 800 seniors. In the case of Windermere, 1,100 seniors. So share your essay when you're ready. Don't give it to us at every single step. A lot of you, when we're talking about the editing process, as we said, keep your circle of reviewers small. There is the cafeteria test, which we forgot to mention.
Yes.
The cafeteria test basically is if you dropped your essay on the floor and your best friend picked it up, would they be able to tell that it's you without looking at the name or anything? So if they read the essay, they're going to be like, oh, this is totally this person. Or again, as we said, the roommate test, like, is this the person that I want to sit next to or live with in college?
So speaking about Google Docs, like Mrs. Morris said, please share your editing rights with us or your essays, but just know that every week or every day, we're not going to go in to see new edits. If you have something else you need us to read, or you're finished with it and you want our final thoughts on it, you're going to walk into the CCS and let us know, or CCC, or shoot us an email. Hey, I've updated it. It's the final draft. Can you look at it one more time? Another great piece of advice is it's in your own Google personal drive. So you're probably just going to call it personal essay or personal statement or essay for Common App. If you don't put your full name in it or any way to describe who it is to us, we could have 45 personal statement essays with no names on it. And then again, we don't know who we're advising and whatnot. So if you are sharing with us, please put your full name or some identification to it as well.
And then also tell us the topic that you selected so that we can make sure that we know which question you are addressing. But again, even if it morphs, that's perfectly fine.
Yep.
There was one other thing that I wanted to mention. Yeah, that's really good advice that Ms. Lorenzana just put on the chat. Make sure that you have your list of schools that you're applying to on SCORE, because when the universities visit, you'll get the notification that those universities are visiting. And then also it helps us because as we said before, universities have different personalities. So if you're applying to a competitive university, that essay is going to require potentially different feedback in terms of what you want to get out of it.
Or who you want to showcase, how you want to showcase yourself in your essay.
Let's see. Do you guys have any questions?
Ryan, I know you are Windermere. I cannot wait to read your essay. I want you to share it with me, or Mrs. Lorenzana is going to share it with me because I'm already like so excited.
I do want to take a minute to talk about Rashmi's question, like how do you talk about the activity and make it more like your personality? So when you're writing about the hobby, you're not just going to write about what it is. You're going to write about when you do it, why you do it, and that's probably where you're going to get into a deeper thing. You know, did you start it as a hobby and now you do it competitively? That speaks to your character and your discipline and your dedication. You know, I do it because I do it when I'm overwhelmed, or I do it when I need a pick-me-up, or I do it when I want to get energized. So all of that, those are those additional questions as to, aside from what my activity is, are the ones that are going to get into something a little bit more meaningful and deeper about your personality and your values.
And we mentioned it before, College Essay Guy, he has a whole YouTube channel specific to him. There's two different activities. I know Mrs. Lorenzana put a link in the chat box, but there's an interest survey that he has. And then there's also an activity it's about 5 to 10 minute activity. Both activities that he has is under 10 minutes, and it's amazing the brainstorming power of just picking words and adjectives about things in your life or things that you identify yourself in. And a lot of times students can start writing their essay based off of I don't know, and personality traits that they seem and deem really important to them. But there's a values exercise and then a
I think I know the one you're talking about. It's the one where they and we did it last year. You think, in fact, we can do it right now because we have time. Think of an item in your bedroom. You know, close your eyes and visualize your bedroom, and think of an item in your bedroom, not technology, that you will take with you and that you already know you're going to keep with you wherever you go. You're going to take it with you to college. You're going to take it with you when you move to your new house or your new apartment or whatever. And you can think about that item, describe that item. Obviously, you're not writing, but why is that item significant to you? Why are you going to take it with you no matter where you go? And that is closely tied to the showing, not telling. And it is, of course, very much tied to your values. I did this activity with a student recently who her academics were good. She'd had some significant health issues, and basically because of her health issues, she couldn't remember a portion of her schooling for, I think, for like one semester, almost 1 year. But she's like, I don't want to write about my illness. I don't want to write about that. I want to write about something else. So we did this exercise, and she talked about her journal. And I said, well, tell me about the journal. And she described the journal and what do you write about? And she said, you know, I sometimes write about things that are worrying me, bothering me, funny things that happen in my life, etc. And I said, do you go back and read it? She goes, no, sometimes it makes me want to cringe when I read what I wrote about. And then she said, and sometimes I look at that and I'm like, gosh, I thought that was the end of the world, and the world's not over, obviously. And I think how big that seemed to be back then, and now it's insignificant. Well, now she has perspective. She is showing, not telling. And then when we talked about her illness, she said, the journal actually really helped me because there are periods of my life that because of my treatment and medication, I can't remember portions of that time. But because I was writing in my journal, I can look back and I can read about what happened. And I was like, oh my gosh, your essay's right there. Because you're writing about the journal, you're not writing about your illness, but you're touching up on it, and you're not writing about, you know, you're not kind of getting lost in the whole narration of the story. You're showing, not telling. So it was a really powerful activity that we did. And, you know, I think she ended up not writing the essay about that. But when we did it, I could completely see her essay there.
Yeah. And so it's the objects exercise from College Essay Guy and then the values exercise. They're different. And they're really, really good. And it will take you under 10 minutes to do. And it just can give you a platform to write about within an afternoon. So can't suggest that enough.
So we will have other workshops. And again, we're here for you to give you feedback and look it over. If you guys are good, then we'll hopefully see you in 15 minutes for the financial aid presentation. Otherwise, have a great day.
Thank you all for joining.